My sister-in-law and I have an agreement. She watches my kids 3 days a week, and I watch hers 3 days a week. This agreement has stood since March 2020 without issues. Any changes have been discussed weeks in advance. A couple weeks ago, we had an argument. The next day, I brought my kids to her house, dropped them off, and left. I didn't speak to my sister-in-law, because when one of us is in a rush, like I was, it's standard for us to just let the kids out, stay in the car, and drive off when you see the door open. I drove to work, about 40 minutes away. When I got there, I had about 20 missed calls, and even more texts, all from my sister-in-law, all saying she didn't want to watch the kids given our argument. Her first text arrived a little before I got to her place, but I didn't see it until I got to work because my phone is always on silent when I drive. I rang her, said I'll arrange to work from home, then come get the kids. She said I have 45 minutes to get back to her place or she would call the police. I told my supervisor the situation, and she said I could leave after I did a few things. This delayed me 20 minutes. When I got back to my sister-in-law's, just over an hour later, she said she'd already called the police when the 45 minutes ran out. I then had to stick around long enough to tell the officer that I didn't abandon my children, there was just a communication issue. Sister-in-law and I had another shouting match later over this. I arranged other childcare for my kids and I've been mostly ignoring her since. However, she reached out and apologized, and has asked if I'd be willing to go back to the old childcare arrangement. I work with kids. If I got child abandonment on my record, I would never work in my field again, which she knew. And her calling the police was a massive overreaction, so if she needs a babysitter she can go whistle for all I care. She said that if I checked my phone, talked to her that morning, or came back when I was supposed to, she would not have needed to call the police, and I did this to myself. As she gave me a warning with that first text and I could have checked my phone or spoken to her directly when I got to her place. All of which she says she would have done if she were in my position, given that we'd argued the night before. I've told her that if she thinks I'm babysitting for her, she's delusional, and she's on her own. Because of my refusal, it's looking like she may have to quit her job because my brother and her would pay more for a babysitter than they would earn from her working. My mother and brother have both called me an arsehole because there were no consequences to her calling the police, and that while she overreacted, she's apologized, so if I really forgive her, I'll let us move on. This income loss would also mean that she, my brother, and my niece and nephew might need to move somewhere cheaper. That my brother might have to take on extra hours at work. And in an extreme scenario they may even be completely unable to live independently, meaning they'd have to move in with her parents, who live several hours away. I recently got married to Matt. Matt has a stepsister, Tiffany. I have met her less than 10 times in the 5 years I dated Matt, as she doesn't live nearby and is not close to my husband. However, she was invited to our wedding. I should mention that Tiffany is very attractive. She is pretty, with a currently fashionable body type. She also dresses well and spends money on her appearance. This is well known, and even though I've only met her a few times, whenever she is brought up by my in-laws she always mentioned as being very invested in her image. I don't begrudge her this at all. The ceremony went fine, but afterwards, while my in-laws were congratulating me, my father-in-law commented that I looked beautiful, and in the next breath mentioned Tiffany did, too. His wife caught his eye and shook her head, but I ignored it. When Tiffany came over to say congratulations, she looked stunning. Her dress was beautiful and fitted her perfectly, her hair and makeup looked like they'd been done professionally. And she was wearing a pair of obviously designer shoes. Her outfit was totally appropriate for the event. But I was still weirdly upset by how she looked and immediately felt self-conscious next to her. Even Matt told her she looked great, and they rarely talk. For the rest of the night, every single male guest at the wedding asked about Tiffany, who she was, how I know her, if she was single, etc. By the speeches, I was fed up and almost in tears, and even the best man mentioned her in his speech off the cuff. I let it go, went on my honeymoon, and tried to forget the whole thing. We came back about a week ago, and this past weekend had dinner with my in-laws. Tiffany was visiting, and we learned that she had got engaged. She showed us her comically large ring and said she was planning to have the wedding next year and that it would be a black tie event. Before I could stop myself, I jokingly said that I was pretty sure I'd already been to her wedding. I was the one in the white dress. She asked what I meant, and I thought there was no point in lying, so I just admitted I felt she upstaged me at my wedding. She laughed and said, "You can't upstage a bride." I asked if I could wear white to her wedding then, and she shrugged and said, "If you think it'll help." She then apologized if I felt her outfit was inappropriate. My in-laws moved the conversation on, and we went on with dinner. When we got home, my husband blew up on me, saying I embarrassed him by being petty and jealous of Tiffany. He said he doesn't even like her, but even he knows she can't do anything about what she looks like or the clothes she can afford. And I made myself look bitter and childish, and him by association. I admit it wasn't my best moment, but I thought he would at least understand how I felt given that he heard everyone's comments that night. He's demanding I apologize to Tiffany and his parents, but I don't think I said anything that heinous. I'm in a relationship with a guy who also works in tech. He makes $68K and I make $130K. I am a mechanical engineer at a robotics startup. He works at a more stable job doing programming at a large company. He brought me to meet his friends at a party and they asked me about myself. His friends mostly work in tech too and talked about themselves in terms of their jobs. I told them I'm an hiker, I do archery, I love road trips and camping and riding dirt bikes, etc. Basically talking about my hobbies because work is just a way to get paid to do the shit I love. It's not how I define myself, and it doesn't come to mind when someone wants me to tell them about myself. One of his friends asked about work and I said, "Oh gosh, I don't want to talk about work at a party." Spent my whole day sweating my ass off in 95-degree heat trying to replace this busted-ass motor just to find the replacement. I wasn't lying or trying to downplay that I have a good job, that really is how I spent my day. And I wasn't in the mood to talk shop at a party. Some other conversations came up casually that probably also made me seem poorer, like me saying that car dealership repairs were a ripoff, and telling my boyfriend that my childhood neighbor's trailer caught on fire and I was gonna visit and help her out. I wasn't doing it on purpose, I was literally just talking about my life, but I guess I gave the impression I was poorer. It got later in the night, everyone was getting drunker, and some of his friends, not close ones though, were making jokes about me growing up in a trailer and being a gold digger, and being ready to jump to a richer guy. Really misogynistic shit honestly, since they don't even know me and seem to just assume all girls are good diggers. He didn't say anything. He later said it was because he'd smoked weed and gets quiet and has trouble carrying on a quick conversation when he's high. But regardless, I felt hurt he didn't say anything. I got irritated with his friends and asked, "Now why the hell would you say that when I make twice what he does?" His friends went quiet for a second and I continued, "There ain't no gold to dig here, not with him or anyone at this party. So do y'all think I'm cheap, or do y'all think?" My boyfriend wanted to leave the party shortly after and he was pretty upset with me for telling everyone I make twice what he does. I said I would have held my tongue if he'd checked his friends himself. But he didn't say anything, so I wasn't about to let them talk to me like that. He said it was humiliating and now everyone thinks I'm a. And I flippantly said, "At least they know I'm a rich." He was angry I embarrassed him when I spoke up. I was angry I had to say anything at all because his friends were talking shit, so it should be on him to check them. This happened during this weekend, me being in my early 30s and my GF in her late 20s. I was invited to a wedding ceremony of a colleague and could bring someone with me. I asked my girlfriend that I've been dating for a year if she would like to join me, and she was really happy because she apparently loves weddings. Since we don't live together, I drove to pick her up so we'd have some time to spare before the ceremony. As she comes out, she looks really beautiful and has obviously put in time to fix her hair and makeup. She's also wearing an off-white dress that was rather ornate. As she got in, I told her that she looked stunning, but I asked if she could change to a different colored dress for the ceremony. I'm not one for etiquette by far, but one of the few things I have heard everywhere is that you should not wear a white dress to a wedding unless you're the bride. She became pretty upset and wanted to know what was wrong with her dress. I said that it would be inappropriate to wear a white or off-white dress unless you're the bride, and that it's like wedding law or something. trying to be light-hearted about it. She rolled her eyes and said that it was an outdated tradition about women and virginity, and that when her friends got married everyone wore white and that it's not a big thing anymore. I told her that I don't know what the dress code is for this ceremony, but since it's not saying all white clothes, I still thought she should change to another color, but white or almost white, because my colleague was getting married and we had no idea how she felt about it. My GF became really upset and told me that I was trying to control what she was wearing and that it was abusive, which honestly made me really upset and hurt. I said something along the lines of, well, you shouldn't go to a wedding with an abuser then, and then I told her to off out of my car. She began to cry and wanted to apologize and give me a hug, but I just told her to get out, which she did. To clarify, we never left the driveway by her home. I did not drop her off in the middle of nowhere or anything like that. I drove off and she called and texted me a bunch. I answered, I don't want to talk right now, and then turned my phone off and attended the ceremony. The bride was the only one that was wearing white, so I feel as if my gut feeling was the right one. When I got home, my phone had blown up by texts from her and her best friend saying that I was being inconsiderate and controlling, and should apologize for my behavior. I've vented to a few friends, most of them agreeing with me, but some have said that it was an asshole thing to tell her that she could not wear her dress, because it had nothing to do with me. I feel as if I was in the right since it was my colleague's wedding and it was better to be safe than sorry. But I'm also not sure if I was being an asshole about the situation. My girlfriend found out about the thread, don't know if she knew my handle, or just found it, and we talked over the phone. She apologized and I apologized, and it was a pretty good talk. She asked if she could come over, and I said no and that it would be best for us to go our separate ways. She got upset and asked why I wouldn't even try to work it out. I basically just said good.
Bye.
And then she said my was small, which actually made me laugh after what had been a pretty mature conversation, and then she hung up. I'm pretty sad about it. She really made me feel happy. I was hurt, but if she did think I was being abusive, it would be the right thing to do. And if she did not think I was being abusive and said it anyways, I would not want to be with her. So anyways, I think things worked out for the best for us both.